We didn't. Thanks for watching. Bye. We did actually buy a single family home for $370,000 about a month ago on our roughly $42,000 salaries here in 2025. So this video is going to be about our journey, about a lot of numbers, about the finances behind how we were able to make it to this place. It definitely is not a magic bullet. Neither is it this massive achievement that I'm trying to sell to you. But I do know that a lot of us struggle with first even being able to imagine that something like this is possible, and then secondly, actually being able to make it happen on salaries that have not kept up with inflation, that have not kept up with house prices. Before we dive into the numbers and the finances, I do want to give you a little bit of context. I'm 29, my spouse is 27, and we bought this house together. So I'm not talking about $42,000 salary total, I'm talking about two 42k salaries for a household income of about 84k. All of the numbers that I'll be sharing in this video are for me alone. My spouse, Renee, she also was debt-free, but she had slightly more expenses, was making the same amount of money, and was saving roughly the same amount. But for this video, I'm going to focus on how I got to where I am. I also want to add the caveat that all of the numbers that I'm going to be sharing in this video are approximate, because I didn't keep track of everything as hawkishly as I probably should have if I knew that I was going to be making this video. The way I'm going to structure this video is through the years from 2021 all the way up to 2025, because 2021 is really when I started on this journey. Back in 2021, I was about 26. I was living in Kolkata, India, which is where I'm from, and I was making about 25,000 rupees a month working at an ed tech company. Around the summer of 2021, I decided I wanted to leave Kolkata, come back to the United States, where I had gotten my undergraduate degree at an art school in Chicago. When I made that decision, one of the most important things for me was to not go into debt for grad school. I know that that's way easier said than done, but I was able to do it. I was able to get into Brown University in the literary arts program that was not only free of tuition, but also gave me a very healthy stipend. I started at Brown in the fall of 2021, and my annual stipend or salary really was about 42k, give or take. The first few months that I was here, I really was just spending most of that money setting myself up. But once I was through that period of the first couple of months of being here, I realized that I could actually save. I could actually save a significant amount. And this was a practice that I had started back in Kolkata even when I was making 25,000 rupees, which is not a lot even by the standards in Kolkata. I had developed this practice of saving as much as I could. So in late fall of 2021 is also when I met Renee, my spouse, and that's really when this collective dream really of buying a house started for me. Because up until then, I just hadn't been making enough money. I hadn't really had the audacity really to dream of buying a home, especially as an artist who was in a program for creative writing. There just weren't that many prospects that made me believe that I could really make something like that happen. Around late fall of 2021 is also when I started my financial re-education journey. So this meant learning how to save, or where to put your money when you save, right? What a high yield savings account is, how to invest. I was learning what the stock market is, what a stock is, what a dividend is, etc., etc. So really I spent that time upskilling myself and understanding how I'm going to use the money that I'm finally able to save. I should say, before I came to the States to Brown University for graduate school, I was in Kolkata saving up all of that money in order to pay for me to actually be able to get here. So this meant spending my money on visa appointments, on application fees for graduate schools, for the flight tickets to get here, right? For moving my stuff and the extra baggage fees and things like that. So when I came to Brown University, I came with really zero money, like zilch. But that's already such a head start because I was also coming in without any debt. In 2021, I was living with a roommate in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we were paying about $1,400 in rent. So for me, that came to $700. My living expenses were about $1,500 a month that I was spending overall. At the end of 2021, I had made about $11,000 over the 4 months post-tax, and I had saved roughly about $5,000. What I did with those $5,000 is to put it in a high-yield savings account and start to invest. I started really slow because I wanted to understand the market. I wanted to understand how things worked. So I wasn't really investing more than $50, $20, $10 at a time, just to see how things moved, how I was feeling as the stock market was evolving. And it gave me a lot of information about how I wanted to proceed in the following years. 2022 was a big year for me because I spent all of that year in Brown University collecting that sweet stipend. And also, I was working a little bit extra over the summer teaching a pre-college course that boosted my income a little bit to more than maybe 46K. I ended that year having saved up 15K, which ended up becoming my standard for how much I wanted to save every single year. This meant saving roughly about $1,200 a month, and that meant being pretty conservative with my living expenses, but not robbing myself of the joy of living. In July of 2022, my spouse and I, well, then partner, and I moved in together. So our rent also changed a little bit. We were paying $1,450 together, so about $725. My living expenses actually went up from about $1,500 to $1,600 in 2022. So I was saving still roughly the same amount with those additional summer employment opportunities. This was also the year that I started investing a little bit more aggressively. I chose to have a balance of about 60 to 40 in terms of 60% being my stock portfolio and 40% being cash that I was keeping in a high yield savings account. So at the end of 2022, I had about 15K saved up in addition to the $5,000 or so that I had from the previous year, which brought me to about $20,000. So 2022 was really my least complicated year in terms of the money that I was making, the rate at which I was saving, the amount of change that was happening in my life at the time. But in 2023, shit got real. 2023 started with Renee and I getting married. We made this big decision about how we wanted to get married, how much money we wanted to spend, how many people we wanted there. And we decided on really wanting a very intimate, very small wedding that we ended up having in our living room, which not only was super sweet and extremely memorable, sharing it with our closest friends, but also ended up saving us a lot of money. I think we might have spent maybe $150 total, mostly on snacks and things like that to get married. And at the same time, it was extremely memorable. We did decide though that we wanted to spend our money on a really nice honeymoon. And we got really lucky and are really privileged to have families that were both very willing to contribute some money for us to be able to take that honeymoon. So it ended up really being free for us, which was an immense privilege that we're very grateful to them for. But yeah, besides the wedding, we didn't really spend much on coming together. After we got married, I applied for my green card because I was on a student visa up until then, and that cost a lot of money, but I'll spare you all the details. In the summer of 2023, I graduated from Brown University, which was awful, amazing, great, okay, whatever. I don't know. It was it was complicated. It was complicated because I was so ready to get out of there, but it was also terrifying because I had just lost my source of income and didn't really have one that was lined up. I did still have my summer classes that I was teaching that I had been teaching the previous 2 years as well. So it kind of kept my boat afloat, and we had more than enough savings to fall back on. In the fall is when things got really tricky because I had a high school teaching job that I wasn't excited about and had to leave in about 2 or 3 weeks. And that meant that I spent 4 months at the tail end of 2023 completely unemployed. So when I graduated in May, my savings were at about $26,000. But by the end of 2023, because I was eating into those savings quite a bit, I was down to about $21,000. My income for the whole year was roughly about 32k, which still wasn't awful, but it did put a little seed of doubt in my brain about whether or not I'd be able to keep up this rate of saving that I'd been able to keep up for the last 2 years, and whether that meant that I'd have to let go of this dream of being able to buy a house. And then came 2024. Anyway, 2024 brought with it a lot more hope because I started that year with adjuncting at the Rhode Island School of Design. It put me back on track with making a similar amount of money as I was at Brown University, so it wasn't really a big step up having gotten my graduate degree, but it was still extremely comforting to know that at least I could maintain that level of income. Inflation had also gone up quite a bit by this time, so my living expenses also had gone up to about $1,700 a month. Our rent was at about $1,550 a month, so $775 a month for me. But because I was back to making about $42,000 a year, I was able to get back into saving about the same rate as I was when I was at Brown University. So I was saving about $1,200 a month, which brought me to a yearly total of $15,000. Added to the previous year's savings, that brought me up to about $37,000. Now, the summer of 2024 was when I was hell bent on buying the house. But we went to some open houses, we thought about it, we thought about things like moving to Philadelphia, where the house prices are much lower, and just realized that we had to do something extremely difficult, which was to stay put. We just didn't have enough savings to be able to afford a 20% down payment and still have some emergency savings left over. We did flirt with the idea quite a bit though, and I think going to some of those open houses really told us what we needed to do and where we needed to be financially in order to do this right. So when the summer of 2024 passed and the season of home buying was behind us, we hunkered down. Hunkered down? Bunkered down? Sat down? Stood? We hunkered down for the rest of the year and just kept saving, kept doing what we were doing. Our rent still went up to $1,650 this time, and our living expenses went up as well, but we managed to save at roughly the same rate. 2025! 2025 brings me so much joy to think of, because this is the year that we actually made it all happen, that we fit all of our different pieces together, and here we are in this house. So in 2025, we continued to save the same amount. I was still working at the Rhode Island School of Design, so that was becoming a slightly more stable source of income. Then came time to budget. At this point, I want to share with you that my spouse was also obviously saving and preparing for this moment herself. And while I had saved up about 49k, she had saved up about 39k. Together, that came to 88k. And we also had some from the money that our families had gifted us for the honeymoon, and we hadn't spent it all. So we had some of that money left, about 10K in total. So all in all, we had $98,000 saved up between us, including everything. Obviously, not all of this money had been set aside for the down payment. We were very, very cautious about wanting to have plenty of money for our safety net, as well as for home improvement things and all of the expenses that come with buying a home. We also wanted to take into account the closing costs, which we calculated to be roughly about $8,000 to $10,000 within that budget. So $80,000 that we had set aside minus those $8,000 for closing costs brought us to about $72,000 that we could put towards a down payment. That brought our budget to $360,000. We had left ourselves a lot of wiggle room, definitely on the lower side, because if we could get a house for free, we would. We also had a range above it where we were willing to go up to about $400,000 and compromise a little bit. The other thing we had to figure out was how much we wanted to spend on our mortgage on a monthly basis. So together we talked and decided that our monthly budget would be around $2,000 to $2,400 just on housing. Once we had our budget, both in terms of the price of the house as well as our monthly payment, we were ready to start and get into the housing market. When we were starting out, the housing market was really at its worst that it has been in the last 4 years. Number one, the interest rates were super high. When we started looking, they were about 6.8%. Prices were super high. A single family home in Rhode Island currently is almost $500,000. So we were nowhere close to that median price range, and that worried us. But we decided to go in and start Zillowing, start looking at open houses, start getting a realtor anyway. We were looking actively at local lenders who also had first-time homebuyer programs like rate discounts or down payment assistance. Luckily, we found a lender that had a 1% rate discount for first-time homebuyers, so we were able to lock in an interest rate of 6%. Now, the house that we found was listed for $369K and really ticked all of our boxes. It was actually the first house that we saw on the weekend that we started going around to open houses. When we first saw it, we said no. But then we saw 2 or 3 more houses, and then we were like, actually, that first one wasn't that bad. The other thing that really sweetened the deal for us was that our lender told us that we qualified for a program that was meant for first-time home buyers who were also people of color. I qualified for both of those things, and so we added in our names for that lottery. So this was a grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, and it was for $50,000. I know, it was wild. We didn't even think it was a real thing, and we're not expecting to get it at all. It turns out we ended up getting it, and it was something that absolutely changed how we thought about our finances. Now, it wasn't as straightforward as it probably sounds on video right now. So many issues, so many bumps, so many obstacles, but all said and done, it was an incredible gift. Grant or no grant, though, we positioned ourselves in a way where we could afford this house regardless. We knew what we wanted, we knew what we could afford, and it made all the difference. In the end, for our $370,000 house, we had to put down 20%, which was $74,000, plus closing costs of about $8,000, which brought it up to $82,000. $50,000 of those $82,000 were paid from that grant money, which left us with about $32,000, $16,000 each, and we were there. So that's how we ended up in this house of Kajur. It's been a long journey, but I wanted to make this video in order to let you know how we made that possible. And if you're in a similar situation financially, then know that it might be possible for you as well. It definitely isn't just blood, sweat, and tears. There's also a lot of privilege involved, a lot of luck involved, a lot of other factors involved that has made all of this happen. And the least of them all is community and friends. I've had so many people just lift us up and send us their wishes and just be so kind to us. So thank you, anyone who's watching. If you've ever talked to me about any of the house buying stuff and finances and things like that, my goal with making a video like this is to bring back some transparency into these processes, especially for those of us who are middle to lower income, and share these secrets. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.